What's up, everybody? I'm Hoops and Hip Hop, and welcome back to another episode of the Pokeblock Podcast. In last week's episode, we sort of did a follow-up prediction type of episode in relation to one of my earlier videos on my own YouTube channel, predicting what the new mythical Pokemon that's actually going to be revealed next week on Thursday might actually be like. So that actually is going to be a hot topic of conversation for next week's podcast as well, once we officially get the official reveal of the Pokemon and we find out everything else that's going to be going on Pokemon Day. However, in the meantime, there isn't really a whole lot Pokemon-wise that is currently going on right now. We did have the newest, I should say, episode of Pokemon Twilight Wings earlier this week, and my sentiments about that are the exact same as they were last month when I talked about that on the show. Basically, we need this as a full series. It's a crying shame that we don't have anything like this as a full series, and overall, it's really fantastic. So I'm really loving what I am seeing there. This latest episode was a lot of fun, but basically, other than that, there isn't really a whole lot of stuff going on currently as far as current events and news and things like that for Pokemon. And since we're going to be getting a lot of stuff in one way, shape, or form next week for Pokemon Day, and there was actually a lot of things that happened within the Nintendo realm of video games over the past week, just not Pokemon related, I thought I would take one of my I thought I would make this episode a little bit different and actually talk about that other Nintendo non-Pokemon stuff, because, I mean, as a fan of video games, and as a fan of Pokemon, I'm also a huge fan of Nintendo. Nintendo is like my biggest love, that's why I love Pokemon, and I really don't get a chance to talk about that in terms of like making actual content on my own channel because I am a Pokemon-centric channel. So every once in a while, every once in a blue moon, I'm not really going to do it all that often here. It's still going to be Pokemon for the most part, but every once in a blue moon, in a situation like this, I feel like I'm just going to go ahead and talk about what's going on in the world of Nintendo as opposed to just Pokemon, because like I said, I don't really get a chance to talk about it, and I think it would be a lot of fun. And today in particular, we do have, like I said, a lot of stuff that's been going on over the past week in the world of Nintendo and kind of just video games in general. So that is going to be the topic of today. Hopefully you guys are okay with it. We're going to be talking about the Sonic movie that came out last week and basically my impressions of it. I'm going to give sort of a review, I guess, but overall just talk about my thoughts. We're going to be talking about the Animal Crossing Direct and Animal Crossing New Horizons because that's a big deal. We'll touch on that since the Direct happened yesterday. And we are going to be actually talking a little bit about Zelda because today, February 21st, is Zelda's 34th birthday. It's his 34th anniversary of the first game being released in Japan, and if you guys have followed me like super closely, you might know that Zelda is basically my co-favorite video game series along with Pokemon. I love it so much, and once again, I just don't get a chance to talk about it, so I'm going to use this excuse to talk about it. So that's what we're doing today, but before we get started, I do have to thank our lovely sponsors because they are the people that make UCast Studios and this podcast a possibility, and their support is very, very much appreciated. So with that being said, today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. Tax season is here, and that means it's time to file your taxes. There's good news, though, because if you're a W-2 employee, you can save half off of your filing. All you have to do is call the Tax Defense Group before April 15th, 2020 and mention that you saw this ad or heard this ad on UCast Studios. Millions of Americans will get money back after they file, and you can be one of them. So call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973. That number again is 800-850-7973, or you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Writer Junkie. Are you looking to make more money in 2020? Because one of the best ways to do that is by having a new resume that can help you get that dream job. Writer Junkie offers affordable, well-written resumes for the low cost of just $145. They'll even throw in a cover letter for no additional charge. All you have to do is mention that you saw this ad on UCast Studios, and they will get right to work. So go ahead and call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online as well at writerjunkie.com. Alright, with that being said, let's get into the discussion. So I figure we should go ahead and start with the Sonic movie today, because that is kind of the first thing chronologically that occurred, because the Sonic movie has officially been out for a week. It came out last Friday on Valentine's Day, which is basically the perfect day for a Sonic movie come out, let's be honest. I went and saw it that weekend, and some background for you guys here before I tell you my opinions. I have been a Sonic fan literally my entire life. One of the very first games, possibly the very first game I ever played, was Sonic 1. It was between Sonic 1 and Pokemon Yellow for the first video game I've ever played. I can't remember which happened first because they both happened around the time I was like 4 years old, so can't really remember chronological order there, but I know those two were the very first ones. So Sonic has been in my life for so long, so many good memories of playing the original Genesis games. When I got Sonic and Knuckles and added, like, you could put the Sonic 3 and Sonic 2 cartridges on top of that and play as Knuckles in those games. That was a mind-blowing thing. Going to the store to rent that game was just peak childhood moment right there. It was so awesome. So I have so many good memories with Sonic. It's one of my favorite franchises for sure. And so I was very, very excited to see this movie. Obviously, it had a lot of, like, controversy, as Sonic tends to do. Sonic tends to, like, we never have a clean launch when it comes to a Sonic game. There's always something going on that it's basically just nonsense and shenanigans. And this shenanigan, obviously, was the atrocious, absolutely terrible first design of Sonic that we saw in the initial, like, reveal trailer for the movie. And thankfully, they redesigned it, as we all know. The new design is much better. And you know what? Like, comparing the new design, now that we have it, to the old design, just makes the old design look even worse. So I genuinely don't know what they were thinking with that, but luckily they did listen to the fans, which is really unprecedented for, like, the movie industry. Obviously, they updated the design and it just saved the movie, because it would not have been possible to watch that movie and sit through, like, almost 2 hours worth of, like, movie content and have to look at that original design the whole time. That would not have been possible. So first off, the redesign made the movie. Other than that, I thought the movie was really good. I really enjoyed it. It had a really good number, I won't spoil anything, but it had a really good number of Easter eggs for fans of the series, but they were very, very cleverly hidden in a way where if you don't watch, or you haven't played Sonic games or don't follow Sonic, you wouldn't really notice them, but they wouldn't really take away from the movie either. It was kind of just, they were placed really naturally, really subtly, and it was the kind of thing that you could easily pick up on if you were a fan of Sonic, and you could really appreciate it, and it just added to the movie, but it really didn't take away from it either if you hadn't, like, played the games or anything like that. It was really well done in that sense. In terms of, like, because this movie is definitely, it's not like a comedy per se, but with it being a Sonic game, you know there's going to be a lot of, like, jokes and lightheartedness and just goofing around, because that's Sonic's character. And in terms of the jokes and that kind of stuff that was there, I thought it was pretty good overall. Like, considering that it was a Sonic, or not a Sonic, considering that it's a kids movie, it's only rated PG. It's Sonic the Hedgehog, first off, so obviously it's going to appeal to kids. So given that it was more so, like, it was directed towards kids to some degree, considering that the humor was pretty good, I would say there's definitely, like, some kid humor in there, some kid type of humor that sort of can fall off if you're a little bit older, but there were also a lot of jokes that were really just genuinely funny that like genuinely made me laugh, and I didn't have to, like, think about laughing. I just laughed because, like, the jokes were really funny. So there were a lot of those types of jokes in there as well. And like overall, between just like the actual Sonic content, the Easter eggs, the pretty like funniness of it, and then the actual not necessarily the Easter eggs, but just like seeing the actual video game stuff, like seeing Sonic, seeing Dr. Robotnik, just seeing all the things that are actually in the game, that was really cool. And then the ending itself, if you haven't seen the ending or haven't seen the movie, I won't spoil it, but the ending just like took the movie to a new level, in my opinion, because it really, really just felt like it was just perfect. It was awesome the way they ended the movie. It definitely set things up for a sequel, which based on the way it ended, I am like just crossing my fingers for, because it ended so good. It ended like it really was fantastic. It really was just absolutely fantastic the way it ended, and I'm just really hoping for a sequel, because it just, I want to see more. I want to see where it goes, because the way it ended kind of alluded to the fact that a sequel, if they did one, because that's kind of what they were hinting at, would be more true to the video games. Not that this first movie wasn't true to the video games, but it definitely had a custom plot, whereas it definitely seems like if they did a sequel, this first one would sort of be playing out as like the origin story for what happens in the video game. So it would almost be a prequel of what happens in the video games. And so that way, the sequel can just kind of be more strict and true to the video game content itself. And oh my gosh, just based on what we saw, it was literally like maybe 5 minutes of film, 5 minutes of the movie at the end that was like setting all this up. And it was just, oh my gosh, it was just so like good and hype inducing and exciting at that possible prospect. And I want to see that. Like that, like the Sonic 2 needs to happen. Especially because the movie did really well, so now like that's kind of the thing that they were hinging on, is the movie would have to do well enough to warrant a sequel. Well, I definitely feel like it's done well enough to warrant a sequel, considering it broke the record. It broke Detective Pikachu's record for the best like opening weekend for a video game movie ever. Which definitely, like, they have the redesign to thank for that, because a lot of people went and saw it just to support the fact that they listened to fans. And like, so I really don't think there's any reason for them not to do a sequel at this point. I feel like it's likely that they will. And if they do, that movie is going to be a really good movie, because now they know like what is going to make a good Sonic movie, because they've had this first one to figure it out. And they've also set up, like I said, the more true to form story that could happen in the second one, with all the different elements coming in. And then even the writers for this movie themselves have gone on record and said that if a sequel were to happen, one of the things they would first and foremost want to do is bring in more of the Sonic characters, like Knuckles, for instance. So, just seeing more of the Sonic characters as well, like that would be a dream movie. Like the way that the Sonic movie ended, and the way that it set itself up and how good it was, and hearing how they would do a sequel if there were to be a sequel, that just sounds like it would be a dream movie for me, and I really hope it happens, because overall, the Sonic movie itself was really enjoyable, and if you have not seen it, you should definitely go see it. Even if you're like a casual fan of Sonic, or you're just kind of a fan of video games in general, you should go see it, because it's a good movie and it deserves the support, if for nothing else, that redesign, like I said, because that is kind of an unprecedented thing that they did. They spent a lot of money to redesign it, so it definitely deserves the support. With that out of the way, though, let's go ahead and get into some other topics. Like I said, we're going to talk about Animal Crossing for a little bit, because we had that Animal Crossing Direct on Thursday, which was only yesterday at the time of this podcast, and it was a 25-minute Direct. It sort of like broke the Direct drought, because we're currently in like the longest drought of regular Nintendo Directs that aren't for a specific game that we've ever been in since they started doing Nintendo Directs. So this Animal Crossing Direct, even though it wasn't like, it was only for one game, it wasn't like a regular one, it was still very refreshing, especially because Animal Crossing New Horizons is a huge game, people want to know about it, and overall, I thought it just looks really good. Like the game, it looked really good to begin with, but now it looks really, really, really good. They showed some things. Like I'm very much a casual Animal Crossing player. I've only ever played New Leaf, so this one is going to be my second one that I play. But it just looks so fun. Like they've made a lot of things like way more convenient. Like you can, like the way you decorate your house is a lot more convenient, and you can even like change the landscape of the island itself, which is like an unprecedented thing for Animal Crossing. And then the visual aesthetic of Animal Crossing, just the art style of it being put into HD, it's just like such a calming thing. That is just like what Animal Crossing is known for, is just for being just a really relaxing game that you can just turn on and all of your concerns just melt away because you're in this beautiful world where there's no objective, there's no end goal. You're just there to live, to decorate your house, to talk to your neighbors, to go collect leaves and plants and animals and just basically just have a good time living is what the goal of Animal Crossing is. And it's very, very enjoyable and relaxing. So if you've never played an Animal Crossing game before, I definitely recommend it, because it's the type of game that can basically just take a load off your shoulders, is the way I would describe it, while having fun at the same time. So it's really, really enjoyable, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm very excited for it. However, I will say, going back to the Nintendo Direct drought thing, I was discussing this with a friend of mine, and I kind of came to a realization as to why we might not have a Nintendo Direct at this point. Because, like I said, we're in the biggest drought currently of regular Nintendo Directs we've ever been in. Usually they have one at the beginning of the year in January. They didn't. If they don't have one in January, they're definitely going to have one in February. But that did not happen this year either. And that's when people started to get really worried. And I think I might know the reason why. I think Animal Crossing New Horizons is the reason why. Because it got delayed last year to March of this year, and because of the nature of the game and how big of a deal it is, like it's not on Zelda's level or Mario's level, but I would definitely say it's in that B tier of Nintendo franchises in terms of how big a deal they are, especially with this one, because this one's going to be easily the biggest Animal Crossing we've ever had. So because it's definitely a big first-party title for them, it genuinely would not make any sense whatsoever for them to drop a Direct in February, or maybe even in March, like right before the game comes out, with news about other games, because they don't want to overshadow this big release that they have and take any attention or spotlight away from it. Because if you think about it, like take Super Mario Odyssey or Breath of the Wild, for instance. Like you would not, like when Breath of the Wild was coming out, there is no way, like, that they would have done a Direct and talked about the next Star Fox game right before Breath of the Wild is about to come out. There's no way they would have done that because, once again, Breath of the Wild, huge, giant game. Same thing for Mario Odyssey. And even though Animal Crossing is not on that level of those two, it's basically right underneath them. And so I very much believe that Nintendo is trying to give this game all the spotlight and attention possible, because A, they know Animal Crossing is big, B, they know this is going to be the biggest one, and C, they know that they can make the Animal Crossing franchise as a whole a lot bigger if this one does insanely well, which it's setting up to do. And part of that is due to the fact that just the spotlight's on it. It is the game for Nintendo that is coming out this year, because we really don't know anything in terms of like first party outside of the Pokemon expansions, in terms of just like bigger titles. So it is like all the attention's on it. And I believe that is why we're not getting a Nintendo Direct, because they don't want to take away from it, because they probably have some big things to announce. There's probably some big projects they could drop right now, but they don't want to announce like whatever that may be. Maybe it's Bayonetta 3 stuff. Maybe it's Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 stuff. Maybe it's a new sequel to Super Mario Odyssey that's going to be the holiday game for this year. They wouldn't want to announce that type of thing right before Animal Crossing comes out, because then maybe some people who can basically are only going to buy like a few games this year maybe they're like, that direct comes out a week before Animal Crossing is supposed to come out. It shows off Breath of the Wild 2, confirms it for this year, and then a lot of people are like, you know what? I was going to buy Animal Crossing, but I'm going to save that money and use it towards Breath of the Wild 2, even though it's coming out later in the year. I mean, I guarantee you there would be some people like that are kind of fringing on Animal Crossing, but would much prefer a game like Breath of the Wild. And going from Nintendo's perspective, you might think, oh, that's kind of like scummy of them to hold off and just try and get people's money for Animal Crossing. Well, at the end of the day, like, that's just kind of business. That's what you have to do. It's not like they're doing some underhanded scheme, if you will. Like, at the end of the day, that's kind of just the business side of video games, and they are very much a business. They have to make money. They have investors. Like, it's very, very serious stuff. So you can't really blame them for that if that is the case. But I definitely believe that that is the case because it just makes sense. Like, why would you take the attention away from Animal Crossing when Animal Crossing is building up all this hype and it's set up to do really well? Like Animal Crossing is big. They need it to do well. This hype and the tension is setting it up to do really well. You wouldn't pull the rug out from under it at the last second by showing off all of these other games that are coming out, like, later in the year, right before it's about to come out. You wouldn't do that. So with that being said, I not only feel like that is the reason why we are not having a Nintendo Direct, or why we haven't had one, but I also feel like that could be the reason why we might not even get one until April, which sounds absolutely ridiculous, but that's honestly, like, when would be the best time to release one? That genuinely is, because you couldn't really do one the rest of the month, this month, for that Animal Crossing attention spotlight theory that I just mentioned. And then that also applies for basically all of March as well, because the game doesn't come out until the 20th, so you're not going to drop a Direct once again a week before. That would just make no sense. And then you're not necessarily going to do it after either, because you got to give a little bit of birth of time before you can say, okay, on to the next thing, because then it just makes you look like you kind of pulled a fast one on us, and it makes you look like, it basically looks like we're moving on too soon. So they got to give a little bit of time where we can just sit and enjoy Animal Crossing and play it before we kind of look ahead to what's next. And because there's like 10 days before the end of the month, I feel like that's the perfect time. They'll wait 2 weeks. They'll drop one in the middle of April. And that's what will happen. I feel like that is the case. Either that, or I could see them dropping one on Mario Day, which is March 10th. That would be right before, but Mario Day is a thing they celebrate, so I could see something happening there maybe, but my money is definitely more so on it being after, which means it would be coming in April, which is really, really crazy, because usually they have, what's the word? Usually, Nintendo, they have a big release, like, about halfway through the year, like May or June, an early summer game. They usually have a game right around there that is a big release. They had, way back in the day, they had Mario Kart 8 for the Wii U. How was that way back in the day? Like, how can we describe Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U as way back in the day? We are all getting old. At least I am. Anyways, so there was that game that came out. They did, another year, they did, not Breath of the Wild, but the Wind Waker that came out around that same time. Splatoon came around about that same time. You had Fire Emblem Three Houses, which was around that same time. They have a pretty good track record of doing this, at least in recent times, where they release a pretty big game in the May to June, maybe even July time sphere, like basically early summer, and that time is coming up fast. Like, it's almost March, and if they wait till April to do this Direct, that's announcing the game, if they were to do this game, with like a month or two ahead of time, which is really, really ridiculous. So I feel like if all of this holds true and we have to wait till April, we are going to get absolutely dumped on with a bunch of stuff that we absolutely just, it's basically just going to blow our minds, because they've been holding out for so long, and that's gonna build up to a point where they just have to dump it all on us, and it's just going to be absolutely crazy. And that'll kind of be our primer for E3, and they'll show off a bunch of stuff and basically be like, you can look forward to more at E3, and then E3 2 months later happens and we get to learn like the full story. I feel like that makes a lot of sense. It just requires a really long wait, which really sucks and it's kind of crazy, but it makes all the sense in the world. So if I had to guess, I would say that's what's going on and that is what's going to happen. But with that being said, I actually need to thank the sponsors once again today, because I forgot to midway through the video. Thank you to the Tax Defense Group. If you want to give them a call, they'll help you with your taxes. They'll give you a discount for filing with them if you mention the ad. You can call them at 800-850-7973. That number again is 800-850-7973. You can also check out Writer Junkie as well. They'll do your resume. They'll help you get that dream job. Check them out. Call them at 805-587-7966 or visit them online at writerjunkie.com. Mention this ad. They'll give you a discount. Shout out to them for supporting the channel and supporting the podcast. But with that being said, I am about out of time. I have talked a little bit longer than I expected to. I didn't even get to mention Zelda, so I'm going to go ahead and give Zelda a quick shout out here. Happy birthday to The Legend of Zelda. You are my favorite franchise, along with Pokemon. Breath of the Wild is amazing. I can't wait for Breath of the Wild 2. I have so many amazing memories with Zelda. Like, I remember playing Ocarina of Time for the first time, and that was absolutely like the best childhood memory I could ever ask for. Like the joy of going into Hyrule Field for the first time, the just wide open sense of wonder of it. It was truly magical. And from that point on, as soon as I had a little bit of trouble getting past the first level, getting past Kokiri Forest and the Great Deku Tree. But once I did, that game just took me away on an adventure. It opened up, and I remember just like every day after that point, waking up and immediately playing the game, immediately getting into it. And it was in the summer too, so I could do that. I didn't have to go to school, and it was just a beautiful time of my life. It sounds cheesy, it sounds kind of silly, but genuinely, I'm serious. That was an amazing time of my life. So happy birthday, Zelda. I can't wait to see what's next. I love you so much. With that being said, though, that is going to wrap it up for today's episode. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all for supporting this different episode and supporting some different topics. It's always fun to talk about other Nintendo stuff. Like I said, if you enjoyed the podcast, be sure to follow wherever you're listening. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you're on YouTube, and we will also, I can't speak, get back to Pokemon next week when we talk about what happened on Pokemon Day, the new mythical Pokemon, different things like that. That'll be a lot of fun as well. And if you like Pokemon content and you haven't subscribed to my own channel yet, Hoops and Hip Hop, definitely do so, because I would really appreciate it. With all that being said, though, I'll see you guys next Friday. I hope you have a great weekend and a great week until next week. And until then, as always, I love you guys, and I will smell you guys later.